All right, here we are. Welcome to Bookwave with another Wavecast with PatMan, Will, and Rugmo. What's going on, guys?
We're talking about Toltec wisdom right now and the Four Agreements.
Yeah,
Uh,
so tell me
so,
a bit more about that.
so I just finished it up, I think last week, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz, I believe. And the Four Agreements is a nice little book. It's very easy to get through, and it lays down in um, pretty plain terms the philosophy of the Toltecs and their kind of concept of reality and perhaps the existence of paradise afterwards. And they put it in terms of everyone on the planet is living their own dream, which is a term that I've seen in some popular YouTube influencer videos recently. The concept of people living their own dream. I think that's probably where it's getting its traction from, is the Four Agreements. And the dream is essentially all of your societally conditioned acceptances or agreements about what it is in this world that makes the world the way it is. So whether that's grow up and get a job and get a wife and get married and live happily ever after, however you think you're supposed to live, and all of your limiting beliefs, that's what makes up your dream. And they're subconscious agreements that often are made when we're confronted with a negative perception of reality that doesn't conform with our current vision of reality. For example, parents do something wrong. We love parents. Parents aren't wrong. That's when we make a limiting belief about their action and what it means to live in the world, whether that's getting yelled at for wanting more food or getting punished for staying out too late. That's when we make subconscious associations in our mind that can sort of create our dream. And everybody's living a dream. And in order to break out of the dream, you should adopt the Four Agreements, which are be impeccable with your word, and three others.
And to find out those, you'll have to read the book.
I don't want to spoil it all for everyone.
Yeah, I just picked up a copy of the Four Agreements at a thrift store last weekend with a couple other classics as well. Got Wuthering Heights with it. And,
oh gosh, I read that one a couple summers ago. Oh, Heathcliff. Oh, Heathcliff. My dad at the beginning, I've got to cut you off. You can tell me the other books in a minute, but my dad,
right.
at the start of the summer, I was like, I'm reading Wuthering Heights. And he's like, oh, great. This is going to be the summer that you read Wuthering Heights. And that's all you're going to do. And guess what? That's all I remember from that summer, is it was the summer I read Wuthering Heights. That's one of the Bronte sisters. Is it Charlotte?
Emily Bronte.
Oh, it's Emily Bronte. I always get them mixed up.
I didn't know there was another one, so there you go.
Dun, dun, dun.
I also got The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. That's been recommended to me by a few different people. And I
read that back in January.
Yeah, you were one of those people, it must have been. I just can't ever remember. And I got another collection of H.G. Wells to go along with the other one I bought before that.
You were stocking up. What ones did you get this time?
I don't know. The book's way over there.
Oh, okay. Well, doesn't matter.
It fell down.
It's okay.
But it's just got a bunch of other small short stories. And I also got a hardcover collection of Shakespeare.
Hey, nice. I have a hardcover complete works of Shakespeare.
Yeah, it's not like in super good condition. It's falling apart a little bit, but works for me.
Oh, mine's in the same state, but it's my grandmother's. So that's how they ought to be. Books that have character are much more enjoyable to hold.
The pages just turn so easily.
So the other book that I was reading, I finished reading and am currently working to turn into part of my, coursework, coaching work, practice, is the Designing Your Life book by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. How to Build a Well-Lived, Joyful Life. They're both Stanford engineers, I believe, and designers. And their philosophy is happiness is a byproduct of a meaningful, fully balanced life. So they say, you need to look at your life like a designer looks at a problem. And that is that your first solution is probably the worst. And you need to do a lot of brainstorming, and you need to try out a lot of things and fail forwards, because you can't know what your dream for your life is if you don't practice it and find out whether or not it is actually enjoyable or if it's something you absolutely hate. And they, through anecdote and experience and other people's testimonies, explain how it can go well and why it might go poorly. They talk about one woman who quit her high-paying job in the financial sector or something like that to open a deli because she liked eating at delis, and very quickly discovered she hated running a deli.
Yeah, that's something I definitely believe in 100%. That happiness isn't something that you can just directly hunt for. It's a side effect of things like meaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always disagreed with that great American line, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I like the first two, but it should be the pursuit of meaning, and happiness comes afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've been talking about throughout all of our books, is that a life unexamined and a life without meaning is a recipe for disaster, which is also the best quest in RuneScape.
Wow. It's been ages since I did that quest.
Oh. 1 second, guys.
Well, in the meantime, I picked up 2 new books. One of them is called The Anatomy of Story, 22 Ways of Becoming a Master Storyteller by John Truby. And this is the book that I should have read a few years ago.
Oh yeah?
When I just learning how to do creative writing, write short stories, currently write my novel, doing some essays. This is something that I should have picked up years ago. And the first chapter is very interesting because John Truby talks about the definition of storytelling and the 3-act structure, and just trying to not be confused with the real world and the story world, trying to draw comparisons between that. And if you've noticed, many of the definitions that come along with storytelling, they're all bureaucratic, mechanical language, and there's no right way of figuring out how to develop a story with that kind of language. So John Truby mentions that in order to make things simplistic and understandable is to take a look at real life and see what you can draw from it, and then incorporate that into your stories. And so you have to show a great story that's organic, not something like a machine or anything like that. It has to be living. It has to breathe. And so that's the best way to develop your own, essentially develop your own story. And the important thing, too, is drama in fiction is about change. We see characters go through change every minute on each page. And so you have to, instead of just create something artificial or meander in a different direction. And he also brings up, I'm not sure how many there are, but I think there's 5 different story movements. And some of them we can probably distinguish between them. We've probably seen them before. One of the most common story movements is the branching movement, which is a system of paths that extend out from one line. So you can think of it as a tree with many branches, many needles, many leaves, all connected from the root. And so you can see that in movies, like epic movies with a lot of characters and their own conflicts and interests, kind of like American Graffiti, It's a Wonderful Life, Traffic, Avatar, those kind of things.
When you say Avatar, are you talking Airbender or Blue People?
Blue people.
Blue
I'm
People,
assuming.
or The Last Airbender. There's a bit of both in there.
Okay.
Last Airbender's pretty great.
I went to see Avatar, Blue People, in movies under the premise that it was The Last Airbender. It took me 105 minutes to finally accept that I was not watching Avatar, The Last Airbender. It was the most confusing experience I've ever had in a movie theater.
I guess so.
Like, just imagine sitting there the whole time, like, any minute now, Aang is going to show up, the master of all four elements, and there's this guy in a mech warrior suit fighting blue people, and you're like, any minute now, it's all going to tie together.
I'd say as soon as they went into space, I'd have been like, okay, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah, I don't know. I was young. I was naive. I was really excited for an Avatar movie.
So, back to what we were talking about. You've given examples of movies that use this plot structure, but do you have a good example of like what you would use as the root and what would be the trunk and then what would be the branches?
Well, John Truby mentions a few examples. I guess one movie to describe the branching movement is the movie Crash. I don't know if any of you have seen that movie.
Nope.
I have
Crash.
not.
It involves multiple characters in modern day LA as they go through race relation problems and how each character are connected to one another based on these race relation problems. Like there's a married couple who gets carjacked by two ghetto, and then one of them has a sick mother, and the sick mother, has another son who is, I don't remember the position that he held, but it's something by working at the police. And then there's a Hispanic family trying to take care of their daughter, and they have a disruption with a client of theirs who is from Iran. And so each of these characters in LA are connected to one another, and they end up crashing, so to speak, into one another with their own conflicts of interest. So that's one example of the branching movement.
Jump in. When you're talking about like the model of telling a story through branches, is that the kind of concept when you're watching a movie where it starts off with a few people and they're experiencing something, and then it cuts to a different set of characters in a different setting that are dealing with something else, and it does that 3 or 4 times, and then through that sort of strand you see that they're all interrelated to this one core thing that's your trunk, and by experiencing their stories they eventually meet up and it forms this beautiful canopy?
Yeah, essentially.
Cool. I get it.
Yeah.
The second movement is the explosive movement, which are patterns that are just like the movement describes, explodes in many directions. And these are stories that have action applied to whatever happens in the immediate moment. And sometimes it doesn't fit well. Sometimes it's completely random. But as the story unfolds, and as you pick up the pieces from this explosion, you get a better sense of what that piece is used for, if that makes sense.
I get it. It's a little out there. It's one of those things where, like, it's a template, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to describe a template in terms like Socrates tries to describe things when he's arguing with people and he's like, I want a proof. I want an ultimate proof for every single situation that I can take this proof and apply it to. So to create an understanding of a template without form it is kind of convoluted.
It is. And, but at the same time, you're also curious about each piece and where they fit in. And it may not, again, it may not explain everything, but during those present moments on screen or in a book, there's always like a metaphor to describe what's going on.
Right.
The third one is called The Spiral Story, and this is mostly found in thrillers and mysteries like Memento or Vertigo or Phone Booth, kind of like those Alfred Hitchcockian effects in storytelling where the character keeps returning to a single event or if there's a memory in play, and it explores deeply and sometimes darkly until it eventually unfolds in the climax. And then, of course, the other movement is the linear story, which is just a straight line, 3-act structure. You follow it all the way through. You don't turn left. You don't turn right. You just keep moving forward.
So like just one protagonist going on his hero's journey.
Yeah. And, well, I mentioned to Scott that the problems with storytelling is that it's mechanical and there's no real meaning behind it. So in order to have an interesting premise and leave behind an ending that's worthwhile, you have to go out and explore the real world. It may seem obvious, but it's the only organic thing that you can do, rather than just make a story that's bureaucratic, kind of like what we've been reading with the dialogues of Socrates. Those were great stories, learning from Socrates and everything. But if you've noticed that while we're reading them, did any of it feel organic to you?
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons why people think that Socrates was just a character and not an actual philosopher.
Right.
It was just all handed to you on a silver platter, like, and they had this conversation that got us to this answer, and here it is.
Ayn Rand definitely has the same kind of problem with Atlas Shrugged.
You don't think Atlas Shrugged feels organic?
Well, it does, but it's also really heavily taken over by ideology.
Absolutely. It's
like,
yeah.
Some of the interactions with a lot of the characters don't feel human because they're just like, okay, this is Ayn Rand's vision of evil that we're interacting with, not an actual person.
Yeah, it was like they were shallow while still having so much depth, but the depth wasn't authentic. It was simulated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like, man, I don't know if that's already a thing or not, but like the whole silver platter trap. You can't have your characters be a silver platter. I'll work on it. I'll get back to you. In a week, this will be a perfect metaphor to help authors stay away from the slippery slope of making their points presented so well.
There's probably already a fallacy with this name that we just don't know yet because we're not very smart.
We're smart. We're just not well read, and we're getting there. And I think it's nice to be able to share this process and discover. But yeah, in 3 years of doing this podcast and stepping up how quickly we get through these books, we will be looking back at these videos with a chortle.
I hope so, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And the other book that I got is The Undiscovered Self by Carl Jung.
I saw that you got that. I'm very excited that you have that.
Let's just say that this is going to take me a while to explain. I'll get back to you guys on that.
Fair enough. Yeah, I need to get some books by Jung. I'd like to have an in-depth deep dive into his archetypes because
We should put one of them on the list for Bookwave.
Well, it's weird because a lot of books about Jungian philosophy aren't really written by Jung. And when you go to find a good book on like Jungian archetypes, it's not right away written by Jung. Like you've got other people that have studied his works and done so much more with it. I mean, so much has been done with what Jung's
Yeah.
done.
Every time I see a speaker or a philosopher who calls himself a Jungian, they never think the same way. Like, no two Jungians are clones. Like Jordan Peterson, he's pretty Jungian, but he's got a lot of other crazy ideas too.
Well, it's important to draw inspiration from it, and I think like that's the big thing. When people swear by their ideology and become talking heads to these perfect ideals, and they don't stop to put themselves into their own ideas, it gets really destructive really quickly.
And also Jungian philosophy, it can be inspirational. You can find them in movies as well and in novels if you pay attention long enough. In fact, and even video games too, they've been inspired by Jungian psychology, like the Persona series or Shin Megami Tensei.
Oh yeah, like I think like these guys like Jung and Freud, and I'll just put those two in one category and not know any psychologists. They touch on stuff that explains what we already perceive, but when you have, like I said, the template and you can fill it with form, it becomes a lot easier to express a story when you know what makes a person. Like even just the basic predicates of kinesthetic and auditory and visual type people. When you're building a character and you can say, I want to make this kind of person, and then you can turn to Jungian archetypes and say, well, okay, this is what they'd look like, and then fill it with more form and substance from there, instead of just trying to go out and write characters based on nothing. It transforms the world and allows us to understand it a lot easier.
Yeah. Have you ever done the 16 personality test?
Yes.
I think that's the one. I mean, I've done a lot. I think I've done that.
That was originally developed by Carl Jung and someone else whose name escapes me at the moment.
Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, that's the one.
Yeah.
Pat knows his stuff.
Yeah, I think I got the campaigner personality type. That one got really like classed up and got a dash of Web 3.0. Like it was a really sexy survey.
I was kind of iffy about it because there's so many of those personality types or personality tests. But in the end, I ended up getting the same result, which is I got the architect.
Oh, really?
Oh.
INTJ. Yeah.
That's what Matt is too, I'm pretty sure. Made a couple videos on it.
Yeah, Matt is an INTJ. Elon Musk is an INTJ. Russell Crowe is an INTJ. James Cameron's an INTJ. Heraclitus of Greece was an INTJ.
Damn.
Sir Isaac Newton, Stephen Hawking, Martin Luther, all those.
I'm an INFP, mediator type.
I'm ENFP-T.
Oh, so you're an extrovert, eh?
That's what they tell me. Turbulent campaigner, role diplomat, strategy, social engagement. 74% energy, 56% mind, 64% nature, 85% tactics, 67% identity. It's funny when they describe you that way, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bunch of numbers on a chart. You know, on the surface, it doesn't really seem like much, but much like the Four Tendencies quiz, I think it offers a lot of good tools for you.
So I just want to shout out my group, just because everybody else is doing it. Robert Downey Jr. is in my group. Robin Williams, Quentin Tarantino, RM, whoever Kim Nam Jun is, Russell Brand, Kelly Clarkson, Will Smith, Meg Ryan, Michael Scott from The Office.
Nice.
Spider-Man, Phil Dunphy from Modern Family, Piper Chapman from Orange is the New Black. Like, they really put some work into saying who you're like, and I'm a little upset that half the people I'm like are characters from shows.
The only one I remember from mine was William Shakespeare. I was happy with that.
I've got Willy Wonka in my group, so that's close.
Yeah, pretty close.
I have Gandalf. In my
Okay,
group.
well, why don't you just win the intern?
All right, Pat wins. I gotta go look for mine now. Oh, I got Tolkien, dude.
Oh, nice.
I got
lucky.
Tolkien.
That's
I got
like
Tolkien,
having
Shakespeare,
Gandalf's father.
Bjork, and Alicia Keys. Tom Hiddleston, dude. Julia
Oh, yeah.
Roberts. William Wordsworth. Johnny
Wow.
Depp. See, I actually have Willy Wonka. I have Johnny Depp.
Well, new Willy Wonka.
Yeah. I wouldn't go
I'm
as far as to say that I have Gene Wilder, but
I'm happy to be in the group with Quentin Tarantino and Russell Brand.
I got Frodo on my team too. I'm okay.
That's hilarious.
Frodo and Tolkien.
And then I'm reading the Four Tendencies book. Everybody should take the Four Tendencies quiz because that's a much smaller result base, I think is how I'm going to describe it. So instead of saying...
You only get 4 options in that one. In the personality test at 16.
You break everyone down into just 4 groups, and then obviously there's subgroups inside of those groups, and you could expand 4 tendencies into 16 personalities. But it's a nice insight to know what you tend towards when it comes to satisfying internal and external relationships and expectations. If you haven't done that, Pat, you should do it.
I did it, but I forgot what result I got. And 4 is enough.
Yeah, you said you got Obliger. I remember that.
Okay, yeah.
We're both Obligers, Pat.
I'm a rebel.
Here's a rebel.
Is anybody surprised? I have a whole bunch of other books that I plan on reading, but I don't even know what they are right now. Oh, I know. I have that Faulkner book I picked up, The Sound and the Fury.
Okay.
My business partner recommended I read it. He said that it resonated with him significantly and reminded him of his life. So I look forward to proving him wrong because I'm sure it's horrifying.
There's a coworker of mine who works at this, who offered me a position at his company. And his company, I think it's every month or so, they recommend different books to all the employees there. And one of the books they've been trying to get a hand on, I don't know why they haven't, is Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've lended him the audiobook, and he was like, wow, this is so life-changing. Like, he was so excited about it.
It is a good book, and it's on our list, right? We need to go through it again, because that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the books that
way,
it's like, it's on a pedestal on my bookshelf, but I still haven't read it. Every time I listen to another podcast by Jordan Peterson, I'm like, I should probably read the guy's books, but...
I want to get Maps of Meaning or whatever his first book is, because that was the basis of the sort of viral existence that is 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah.
But,
and by the way, Will, since you mentioned the 4 agreements, I have the 5th agreement on audio if you want to borrow that.
I sure do. I don't know how to borrow an audio file, but I'm excited to engage in that process with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you get a free trial, don't you? Once you sign up with Audible, you get like 1 free book.
Oh, yeah, 30-day free trial. Yeah, I'll have to get that. I don't like listening to books. I have a hard enough time listening to music, but I find when I listen to books, I don't process the information as well.
Is it because the author sounds like a bailiff?
Yeah, it really depends on what the author sounds. I guess that's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jordan Peterson reads his own book, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He read both of his books.
Nice. So that'll be a bit better for you. He's got a good speaking voice.
Yeah, that would be good. Stephen Fry read all of Harry Potter, didn't he?
No, I think that's somebody else.
I remember seeing him say that he did it.
He definitely has done some audiobooks, though.
Oh, yeah. It's totally a thing. I'm pretty sure he did it.
I know he did Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. Probably some other English classics, too.
One would hope. Well, what else do we want to talk about? Anything else going on today?
Not for me. How about you,
I
Pat?
mean,
Just those books that I'm currently reading, and yeah, there's a lot. Since my life has been so busy, I'm trying my best to catch up on all the books that I want to read. And this book by John Truby has piqued my interest so highly that I know I'm going to spend a lot of time on that.
Would you say it's more valuable than some of the other books on storytelling that you've read?
It's very strange now that you mention it. They have their own set of storytelling. And I guess, well, to put it this way, the books that I've purchased recently are all in the fields of psychology and philosophy. And I picked those books up as inspirations because I want to incorporate those in my own storytelling. And as many of who don't know, that I'm currently writing a novel, and many of those inspirations came from psychology and philosophy. And I've incorporated some of them in this novel. But the problem that I don't know, I guess it's just a way of keeping it all fresh in my mind and not let any of them go. Because if I'm going to spend a lot of time on writing, then I need to make sure that my mind is fresh with all those details, if that makes sense.
sounds like you need to turn those details into a hypnosis script.
Probably.
Well, let's call it for now and regroup in a week.
Sure thing.
All right, guys. Best of luck. Keep getting after it.
May the force be with you.
Or equal to mass times acceleration.